Hello, I'm Ron Wilson. In this month's news, the Senate Economics Legislation Committee has recommended the passing of the Superannuation Objective Bill, which is the remaining tranche of the government's reform package announced in the 2016-17 budget. Australia's economic growth rebounded in the December quarter to stave off a technical recession after a contraction of 0.5% over the September quarter. The RBA left the cash rate unchanged at its March meeting, citing rising commodity prices and signs of improvement in the global economy. And in international news, US consumer confidence rose to a 15-year high in February, while the Chinese authorities have flagged a growth rate of 6.5% or above for this year. Michael Pollock has the details.
On the 14th of February, the Senate Economics Legislation Committee released its report on the Superannuation Objective Bill 2016. This bill, which is the remaining tranche of the federal government's reform package announced in the 2016-17 budget, proposes to enshrine the objective of superannuation in legislation. The bill adopts the recommendations of the 2014 Financial System Inquiry by defining the primary objective of the superannuation system as to provide income in retirement to substitute or supplement the age pension. The committee recommended that the Senate should pass the bill, as while not universally supported, it would enhance the stability of the system and create a clear and comprehensive policy-making framework. The majority of the committee rejected the many calls by superannuation industry participants for the objective to be expanded to include issues of adequacy. Australian economic growth rebounded in the December quarter of 2016 with a rise of 1.1% following a contraction of 0.5% over the September quarter. The rebound quelled fears in the market of an impending recession, when business investment in non-mining sectors failed to take up the slack caused by the decline of the mining sector. The December quarter rebound was on the back of stronger consumer spending, housing investment, business investment, public demand and export volumes. Private business investment rose by a surprising 1.6% for the quarter, which reversed falls for the prior 9 consecutive quarters. This improvement was due to a recovery in new construction for non-dwellings and in engineering projects in general. US consumer confidence rose 3.2 points in February to reach its highest level since July 2001. The Conference Board Consumer Confidence Index climbed to 114.8 points in February, up from 111.6 in January. The index had also risen by 14 points since October and by almost 21 points over the past 12 months. Reasons for the strong rises in consumer confidence were the outcome of the presidential election and the post-election share market rally, which spurred optimism around individuals' employment and income prospects. Reports from the Chinese National People's Congress, held from the 3rd to the 5th of March, provided a view of the top leadership's economic tone for this year. Up front, the government said that it is targeting growth of around 6.5% or higher if possible in 2017. While this is in line with many economists' forecasts, it is below the 6.7% rate at which the world's second largest economy grew in 2016 and the slowest pace in more than a quarter of a century. The government also said cutting companies' debt burdens is one of its main priorities for the coming year. The RBA board decided to leave the overnight cash rate unchanged at 1.5% at its March meeting. Governor Philip Lowe said the Australian economy is enjoying a welcome boost in national income from rising commodity prices and signs of improvement in the global economy. Lowe said most measures of business and consumer confidence are at or above average. Consumption growth was stronger towards the end of the year, although growth in household income remains low. With regard to the employment outlook, Lowe noted that labour market indicators continue to be mixed and there is considerable variation in employment outcomes across the country. The Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia has called for the federal government to amend the law to enable the ATO to return unclaimed superannuation monies caught up in legislated threshold transfers to their rightful owners. The threshold at which superannuation funds must transfer inactive accounts to the ATO rose to $6,000 on the 31st of December 2016, capturing, as estimated, an additional 100,000 accounts worth approximately $220 million. In its pre-budget submission, ASFA said active repatriation of accounts held by the ATO would be consistent with the policy objective of reducing unnecessary accounts within the superannuation system and boosting Australians' retirement savings. ASFA CEO Dr. Martin Fay said an estimated $2.7 billion in more than 4 million accounts currently sits in consolidated revenue as unclaimed superannuation. In mid-February, ASIC released an updated version of Regulatory Guide 245, Fee Disclosure Statements, to reflect regulatory and legislative changes such as the amendments to the FOFA reforms, which have occurred since RG 245 was first published in 2013. RG 245 explains the FDS obligations contained in the Corporations Act. These obligations apply to all AFS licensees and their representatives who provide personal advice to retail clients under an ongoing fee arrangement. ASIC reminded advice providers who hold an ongoing fee arrangement with a client that they must provide the client with an annual FDS setting out the fees paid by the client, the services provided to the client, and the services that the client was entitled to receive. The purpose of this obligation is to help clients determine whether the fees they are being charged are in proportion to the services they are receiving or expecting to receive.